Why should the body be anything to you? It's one of the questions that Jesus asks in today's reading from A Course in Miracles. We are on chapter 19, the attainment of peace, and we're reading this section called The Obstacles to Peace, and we're reading a small subsection today of subsection B, which is the second obstacle, the belief the body is valuable for what it offers, which we read yesterday. And now we're reading a subsection of that, which is the attraction of pain. Here we go. Your little part is but to give the Holy Spirit the whole idea of sacrifice, and to accept the peace he gives instead, without the limits that would hold its extension back, and so would limit your awareness of it. For what he gives must be extended if you would have its limitless power, and use it for the Son of God's release. It is not this you would be rid of, and having it you cannot limit it. If peace is homeless, so are you, and so am I. And he who is our home is homeless with us. Is this your wish? Would you forever be a wanderer in search of peace? Would you invest your hope of peace and happiness in what must fail? Faith in the eternal is always justified, for the eternal is forever kind, infinite in its patience, and wholly loving. It will accept you wholly and give you peace. Yet it can unite only with what already is at peace in you, immortal as itself. The body can bring you neither peace nor turmoil, neither joy nor pain. It is a means and not an end. It has no purpose of itself, but only what is given to it. The body will seem to be whatever is the means for reaching the goal that you assign to it. Only the mind can set a purpose, and only the mind can see the means for its accomplishment and justify its use. Peace and guilt are both conditions of the mind to be attained, and these conditions are the home of the emotion that calls them forth, and therefore is compatible with them. But think you which it is that is compatible with you. Here is your choice, and it is free. But all that lies in it will come with it, and what you think you are can never be apart from it. The body is the great seeming betrayer of faith. In it lies disillusionment and the seeds of faithlessness, but only if you ask of it what it cannot give. Can your mistake be reasonable grounds for depression and disillusionment, and for the retaliative attack on what you think has failed you? Use not your error as the justification for your faithlessness. You have not sinned, but you have been mistaken in what is faithful, and the correction of your mistake will give you grounds for faith. It is impossible to seek for pleasure through the body and not find pain. It is essential that this relationship be understood, for it is one the ego sees as proof of sin. It is not really punitive at all. It is but the inevitable result of equating yourself with the body, which is the invitation to pain, for it invites fear to enter and become your purpose. The attraction of guilt must enter with it, and whatever fear directs the body to do is therefore painful. It will share the pain of all illusions, and the illusion of pleasure will be the same as pain. Is not this inevitable? Under fear's orders, the body will pursue guilt, serving its master, whose attraction to guilt maintains the whole illusion of its existence. This, then, is the attraction of pain. Ruled by this perception, the body becomes the servant of pain, seeking it dutifully and obeying the idea that pain is pleasure. It is this idea that underlies all of the ego's heavy investment in the body. And it is this insane relationship that it keeps hidden and yet feeds upon. To you it teaches that the body's pleasure is happiness, yet to itself it whispers, it is death. Why should the body be anything to you? Certainly what it is made of is not precious, and just as certainly it has no feeling. It transmits to you the feelings that you want. Like any communication medium, the body receives and sends the messages that it is given. It has no feeling for them. All the feeling with which they are invested is given by the sender and the receiver. The ego and the Holy Spirit both recognize this, and both also recognize that here the sender and receiver are the same. The Holy Spirit tells you this with joy. The ego hides it, for it would keep you unaware of it. Who would send messages of hatred and attack if you but understood he sends them to himself? Who would accuse, make guilty, and condemn himself? The ego's messages are always sent away from you in the belief that for your message of attack and guilt will someone other than you suffer. And even if you suffer, yet someone else will suffer more. The great deceiver recognizes that this is not so, but as the, quote, enemy, unquote, of peace, it urges you to send out all your messages of hate and free yourself. And to convince you that this is possible, it bids the body search for pain in attack upon another, calling it pleasure and offering it to you as freedom from attack. Hear not its madness, and believe not the impossible is true. Forget not that the ego has dedicated the body to the goal of sin and places in it all its faith that this can be accomplished. Its sad disciples chant the body's praise continually in solemn celebration of the ego's rule. Not one but must believe that yielding to the attraction of guilt is the escape from pain. Not one but must regard the body as himself, without which he would die, and yet within which is his death equally inevitable. It is not given to the ego's disciples to realize that they have dedicated themselves to death. Freedom is offered them, but they have not accepted it, and what is offered must also be received to be truly given. For the Holy Spirit, too, is a communication medium, receiving from the Father and offering his messages unto the Son. Like the ego, the Holy Spirit is both the sender and the receiver. For what is sent through him returns to him, seeking itself along the way and finding what it seeks. So does the ego find the death it seeks, returning it to you. Okay. The attraction of pain. Let's read this one paragraph again. Under fear's orders, the body will pursue guilt, serving its master, whose attraction to guilt maintains the whole illusion of its existence. This, then, is the attraction of pain. Ruled by this perception, the body becomes the servant of pain, seeking it dutifully and obeying the idea that pain is pleasure. It is this idea that underlies all of the ego's heavy investment in the body, and it is this insane relationship that it keeps hidden and yet feeds upon. To you, it teaches that the body's pleasure is happiness, yet to itself it whispers, it is death. Okay, so the body. Jesus is talking a lot about the body in this chapter, right? The Attainment of Peace is the name of this chapter. The Holy Spirit is all about the peace of God, right? This whole course started with nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God, right? So the ego, the only part of ourselves that can experience threat is the ego. The ego uses the body to prove that guilt and sin are real. And the way that it works is through projection. It projects outward. Sometimes it projects out onto others, onto other bodies. And sometimes it projects onto your ego, you in alliance with the ego project onto your own body to prove that sin is real and that guilt is real and that fear is real. And it keeps hidden from you the understanding that is really your choice, that that is really, first of all, an insane thought system that you have accepted. And its purpose is really obscured. And that's why Jesus has to take pains, so to speak, to belabor this point about what the ego is. This whole course is to try to clarify what this ego thing is. And let's keep in mind that there are only two things that Jesus is talking about. And we can, once again, just for the purpose of clarification, we have the Holy Spirit and we have the ego, right? Holy Spirit is the voice for God. The ego is the voice for fear. The Holy Spirit represents love. The ego represents fear. The Holy Spirit represents peace. The ego represents guilt and sin. The Holy Spirit is light, the lighthouse, and the ego is darkness. The Holy Spirit is the sun, and the ego is the clouds obscuring the sun. What else can we say in that regard? Probably a lot. Kind of lost my train a little bit there. Let's just read this part, because I think Jesus does want to kind of emphasize this. It is impossible to seek for pleasure through the body and not find pain. It is essential that this relationship be understood, for it is one the ego sees as proof of sin. It is not really punitive at all. It is but the inevitable result of equating yourself with the body, which is the invitation to pain. So whenever we think of our body as our self, and if you look at our language, we do that all the time. It's actually part and parcel of the way we talk about things. We say, I am sick. I am not feeling well. My head hurts. Or, we also say, I feel good. I am healthy. I am strong. Generally, all those things that we talk about are body related, and it's hard not to, obviously, because it's everything in this world is witnessing to the reality of the body and the reality to differentiation of stuff. There's subject and object. This world is a world of duality, in which there is subject and object, and that's so apparent that it doesn't even need to be said, but it does in this context, because we are this is a course in undoing duality. So basically, Jesus is saying here in this little section, he's saying you can't have one without the other. The dualities all go together, the dualities of life. If you have pain, you have pleasure. If you, and many people say, well, we cannot understand pleasure without pain. We need pain in order to know what pleasure is. Jesus going deeper in saying that the body ultimately is, for the ego, is the home of sin. It's the witness to our sinfulness. And Jesus is saying the Holy Spirit doesn't even, the Holy Spirit only sees the body as a learning device or communication device, meaning it is only a means by which we remember love again, and we share the love, and we communicate love to one another. Why should the body be anything to you, was the question I started with. Why should the body be anything? Why should the body, the body really is nothing. The body is only what you make of it, is what Jesus is saying here. The body is only what we make of it. There's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so, as Shakespeare said. That means when we talk about the body, we're not just talking about, our physical body. We're talking about everybody. We're talking about everything in this world is only what we make of it. Everything is neutral, and it can conform to one of two things: the ego or the Holy Spirit, right? And Jesus sometimes says there's only two emotions. That was another earlier section, that there's two emotions. There's love and fear. So everything will either be seen through the eyes of love and used for the purpose of love, or it will be seen through the eyes of fear and used for the purposes of fear. And that choice, and Jesus says here in this section, you do have a free choice. And the free choice is what teacher you're going to choose. You're either going to choose the teacher of love, which he's calling here the Holy Spirit, which is also Jesus, because Jesus is the manifestation of the Holy Spirit, or you are choosing the teacher of fear and separation, which is the ego, which is, if you really understand what Jesus is saying, you understand the insanity of what the ego is. And Jesus says here, the ego teaches that the body's pleasure is happiness, right? Yet to itself, it whispers, it is death. The body's pleasure is death. Now, this is a very strong statement. We don't generally think that way, but that's really where the ego is headed. Because whenever we put undue importance on the body, and most of us do, because we're constantly seeking the comfort and ease and the protection and et cetera, of the body. So putting that undue attention and attachment on the body is really an invitation to suffering, pain and suffering. And the ego, that's what the ego is going for. The ego, is pulling one over on us, so to speak, and is trying to hide what's really going on, which is, you're going to be really attached to your body, but then, you're going to get sick and you're going to die, and you're going to feel guilty and sinful, and you're going to feel deserving of hell, ultimately. Jesus said this earlier, it's not just death. The ego is not just seeking death. The ego is seeking damnation. And it may be, it may be your damnation, maybe someone else's damnation, but if it's someone else's damnation, it's your damnation, because you don't realize that if you see someone else as damned, you have damned yourself. That's really what it comes down to, because the giver and the receiver are the same. Giving and receiving are the same. That's what Jesus is also saying here. To give damnation is the same as to receive it. It's one and the same. You can't see someone else as deserving of guilt and punishment and blame and hell without seeing that you yourself are the same. And likewise, you cannot see another as infinitely worthy of love and not see that you yourself are infinitely worthy of love. If peace is homeless, so are you, and so am I. And he who is our home is homeless with us. Is this your wish? Would you forever be a wanderer in search of peace? Would you invest your hope of peace and happiness in what must fail? Faith in the eternal is always justified, for the eternal is forever kind, infinite in its patience, and wholly loving. This kind of echoes Paul in Corinthians. Love is patient, love is kind. right? Love is patient, love is kind. Here Jesus is saying it's infinitely patient, infinitely kind. It's only, it's even beyond patient and beyond kind. It doesn't even know what those things really are because it has no need for them. It has no need for forgiveness. So faith is always justified. Fear is never justified. Anger is never justified. Forgiveness is always justified. These are the justification is somewhere, I think, also in Paul, this idea of justification by faith or something like that. I'd have to look it up. But there's a lot of echoes of the Bible, obviously, in A Course in Miracles, and Helen obviously knew the King James Bible very well, and everything is that Jesus is saying here. Almost every line has some echo, has some resonance with the King James Bible, mainly the gospel accounts, but other places in the New Testament. So anyway, hope this is helpful, maybe truly helpful, and we're going to continue. The next section is the third obstacle, the attraction of death. So stay tuned for more. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on the other side. Bye.